Something strange is happening at Skinwalker Ranch, and its owner, Brandon Fugal, is finally breaking his silence. For years, the world has watched strange lights, sudden radiation spikes, and unexplained technology failures play out on television. But, according to Brandon, the public hasn't even seen half of what's really happening. Now, he's come forward with new evidence, discoveries beneath the mesa, government interference, and a warning that may change everything we think we know about the ranch. It all began during a late-night live-stream interview on a small independent channel. Brandon had done hundreds of interviews before, always calm, cautious, and professional. But that night, something was different. He looked tense, his voice was sharp, and behind him, the blinds were closed. Two security guards stood faintly visible in the glass reflection. Before the host could ask his first question, Brandon interrupted. "There are things happening on the ranch we were never meant to understand," he said quietly, "and we've been told to stop digging." The chat exploded. Thousands of people joined the stream in minutes. Brandon began to describe an excavation that took place earlier that month near the southern ridge of the mesa. The team had detected strange bursts of ionizing radiation, the same kind that had hospitalized members of the crew before. But this time, they found something else, something buried 8 feet below the surface, a geometric pattern carved into solid stone. It wasn't natural erosion, and it wasn't modern toolwork. It was deliberate, symmetrical, almost engineered. Brandon paused, visibly shaken. "We transmitted the data to one of our government consultants," he explained. "They told us to close the site immediately and destroy the documentation." The host blinked, confused. Brandon went on. "When we refused, 3 unmarked helicopters appeared over the ranch. No flight plans, no transponders. Just there." He held up his phone toward the camera, showing a blurry image of a smooth, circular cavity beneath the mesa, surrounded by smaller chambers. "We scanned this cavern," he whispered. "Something metallic is inside." Then he said the words that made headlines around the world. "We didn't discover it. Something placed it there." In the days after that interview, speculation exploded online. But what Brandon shared privately with his team was even more disturbing. The metallic object buried beneath the mesa didn't match any known industrial material. It was made of an alloy unlike anything in government or commercial records. When exposed to electromagnetic pulses, it reflected signals in patterns too precise to be random, almost like it was meant to be found, but not fully understood. The team decided to go deeper. They drilled a small borehole to lower sensors and cameras into the cavern. But the moment they did, things began to go wrong. Equipment glitched. Thermal readings flipped from freezing to scorching in seconds. Then, for a split second, a humming vibration shook the entire platform. One of the monitors, usually static, flashed a smooth, glowing outline, a sphere resting inside a cradle. And then, everything went dark. When they pulled the instruments back up, one technician complained of dizziness. Hours later, his skin turned red and his hair began to fall out in clumps. It was radiation poisoning, fast, severe, and unlike anything doctors had seen before. The object beneath the mesa wasn't dormant, it was reacting. That night, Brandon reached out to his federal contact, someone he'd worked with since going public with the ranch. The response came quickly: cease all excavation and await further instruction. By midnight, the ranch's perimeter sensors picked up movement. 2 unmarked SUVs idling just outside the fence line. Headlights off, engines running. Whoever they were, they knew, and they were watching. The next few days brought chaos. Brandon's phone calls started cutting out mid-sentence. Emails disappeared from his servers. Texts arrived hours late. The ranch network showed hacking attempts bouncing across continents. Their cybersecurity experts stared at the logs, whispering, "They're not just looking for data. They're looking for weaknesses." Then, the activity around the ranch intensified. Motion sensors triggered along the northern fence. Cameras rotated, catching 3 tall, motionless figures standing just beyond the property line. Their proportions looked wrong, too symmetrical, too still. After 15 seconds, the video cut to static. When the team gathered the next morning, astrophysicist Travis Taylor watched the footage in silence before saying, "We're being watched, and not just by people." Soon after, seismic sensors buried under the mesa began picking up rhythmic pulses, vibrations every 6 minutes, perfectly timed. They weren't earthquakes, they were signals. When Brandon sent the data to one of his classified contacts, the reply was just 2 words: stop transmitting. As days passed, staff began hearing whispers near the excavation site, voices that seemed to come from inside their own heads. One geologist described it as pressure in his skull, like his thoughts were being pulled downward toward the mesa. He quit the next morning and left without his last paycheck. Then came the dreams. Almost half the crew began waking up at 3:11 a.m. every night, drenched in sweat, all reporting the same vision: a dark chamber, a glowing blue sphere, and a low humming sound vibrating through their bodies. It wasn't coincidence. Brandon stared at the data linking their sleep monitors. "This isn't random," he said. "It's interaction. Something is communicating." 3 nights later, radar detected a small, unidentified aircraft circling the mesa. It wasn't military or civilian. The pilot ignored all attempts at contact. Suddenly, the ranch's radiation sensors spiked again. The object underground was reacting. Moments later, the plane's lights flickered, and its engine cut off mid-air. It drifted down in a slow, controlled spiral before landing in a nearby field. No fire, no crash, just silence. Federal vehicles arrived within minutes, sealing the area and escorting the pilot away. Brandon's team wasn't allowed near the wreck. The next morning, restricted airspace signs appeared around the ranch. Officials said it was for wildlife preservation, but everyone knew that was a lie. That night, the sensors picked up a new pattern: a faint electromagnetic pulse traveling from the mesa toward the crash site, repeating every 42 minutes. The rhythm was too precise to be natural. It wasn't random interference. It was a response. By now, the team was breaking down. The ranch, once filled with curiosity and excitement, had turned tense and fearful. Fights broke out over equipment placement and lab access. People started forgetting things: names, times, tasks. Wearable sensors showed their heart rates spiking for no reason, especially when they stood near the mesa. Brainwave monitors displayed bursts of activity linked to fear and dreaming. Then came the compass failures. Every analog compass began spinning wildly, always pointing toward the excavation site. Digital instruments showed the same: a magnetic anomaly underground, strong and moving. When scientists modeled the readings, the result was impossible: a rotating magnetic field shaped like a torus, a containment shell. During a closed meeting, Brandon told his staff, "The ranch has always been strange, but this feels targeted. It's studying us." One researcher replied in a flat voice, "Or it wants to be left alone." She walked out and never came back. Livestock near the mesa stopped grazing. They stood still for hours, facing the rock, as if listening. Cameras recorded them, unmoving, eyes wide. By this time, Brandon had been ordered again to shut everything down. "You're all on edge," a government contact told him. "Cease operations." When Brandon asked if the government had seen this kind of pattern elsewhere, the line went silent. Then it disconnected. At exactly 3:11 a.m. that night, motion cameras picked up figures again, but this time they were on top of the mesa. Heat sensors showed no biological readings, just faint electromagnetic outlines shaped like human bodies. As security approached, the shapes faded into the stone itself. The next morning, Brandon called a meeting. Despite the fear, despite the risks, he told the crew they would continue. "The world doesn't get smaller when you ignore it," he said. "It just gets darker." By the end of that week, the seismic pulses had evolved into something else: a sequence of structured tones that sounded like communication. The signal repeated exactly every 42 minutes, no variation. It was as if a clock was running underground. They tried to respond. The team broadcast a controlled tone into the cavern. The pulses stopped. Everything went still. The air, the wind, even the insects. Then, suddenly, the system screamed back. A wave of energy surged upward, knocking out servers and flooding screens with static. Hidden in the noise were repeating geometric symbols, not language, but not random either. Brandon stared at the frozen frame. "It's not just sending signals," he said. "It's listening." He ordered a new drill, a small borehole fitted with a fiber optic camera. Slowly, they lowered it through a crack in the rock. For a long time, there was only blackness. Then, the image sharpened. The inside of a perfectly smooth, curved chamber. The walls glowed faintly with blue light, etched in hexagonal patterns. And in the center, floating inches above the floor, was a metallic sphere. It rotated slowly, covered in engraved arcs that looked like orbital paths. Every time it turned, the walls pulsed in rhythm, as if resonating with its motion. Suddenly, the feed flickered. The camera fogged up, then cleared to reveal the impossible, the sphere shifting like it was breathing. In the control room, alarms went off. The temperature jumped 10 degrees. A whisper came through the speakers, a layered voice, deep and mechanical, speaking no words but full of intent. Technicians screamed. One collapsed, clutching his chest. Another fell to his knees, covering his ears. Though no sound registered on the instruments, the screen went white. When the image returned, the sphere's glow had intensified. The walls rippled like living skin. Then the camera melted. The metal casing drooped as though it were exposed to intense heat. Yet thermals showed no temperature increase. Brandon shut everything down. The chamber continued to glow faintly for hours afterward, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The next morning, electromagnetic readings spiked, but not underground. The source was in the sky above the mesa. 3 triangular formations hovered invisibly, detectable only on radar. Cameras aimed upward saw nothing, but the instruments screamed. Suddenly, the ranch's computers rebooted themselves. Gates opened and closed. Security systems activated without input. The same layered whisper from the cavern began echoing through the radio array. The frequencies formed patterns, star maps, according to Dr. Taylor. Then, as quickly as it began, everything went silent. The animals refused to go near the mesa again. The sphere dimmed to darkness. Brandon stood in the command room, exhausted and pale. "Shutting it down makes it worse," he whispered. "It doesn't want to be isolated." That night, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the underground sensors activated by themselves. The chamber beneath the mesa flashed bright blue, illuminating cracks in the rock visible from miles away. The world would find out soon anyway. So, the next morning, Brandon Fugal made his announcement publicly. Sitting before cameras, tired but composed, he said, "We've confirmed the presence of a non-human technology beneath Skinwalker Ranch. For the safety of the public, we're no longer calling this folklore. We're calling it evidence." The world went quiet, and somewhere beneath the mesa, deep under the desert stone, something hummed, faint, patient, and alive, as if listening to every word.